today should.
Woo.
And then I'm gonna blindside you here, sir. Right off the jump.
Let's hear it.
We gotta get rid of this. Well, hopefully we don't hear it, because if we do hear it, why is this? It's right here. There we go. And we don't want to hear it because the gym I go to plays quite. We can't have chump on our title. We probably can't have any of the lyrics at the gym. Let me see. I gotta share the screen because we're gonna get your input.
Okay. Let's see it. All right, what do we got going on here?
Oh, we can't. That's just a couple times. So working some deadlifting technique today.
All right.
So this one I think I only made 3 reps.
That's the John signature move right there that you just did. No, this thing.
And then I'm really working the hook grip. And it's interesting, on my right hand, man, I really have to try to like reach through the bar to get my grip on it. And so working, probably need my knees back more, I feel.
Yeah.
More hips back, more hips back.
So okay.
Got one more here.
Okay. All right. So the thing to watch here, can you slow this down?
I believe so. Just going to give you a second. I would, but I just don't know how. Playback.
Playback, yeah.
Speed. Slower. Speed.
Video?
Slow. All right, so this is about half speed now.
Okay, so yeah. All right, so first and foremost, everything looks really strong. Your back is really, really stable. Hips are stable. And on the way up, things look really good. Like you have a really clean lift on that. It's setting down that your arms are doing the mechanics rather than the hips. Okay. So it's present on all of them. So
right.
Again, really clean lift. And now your arms are what go forward. On that one, not so much. But the first one, and I think the third one.
The last one here.
Yeah. So as we go,
it tends to kind of make sense to me because for sure, like the first one, I always find like, see how the wagon's going.
Okay. So mainly on the first one was the most prominent example, but yeah, let's see this as we go along. I mean, this is really splitting some fine hairs here, though, John.
But still, though.
Yeah. So let's see.
And this is me really just trying to get that grip and locking my shoulders in place.
So pause it. So right there, scapular retraction and depression look really good. For anybody who might be watching this, scapular retraction means the point at which you take your shoulder blades and move them on the back of your around the back of your body more toward the spine. Protraction is when you pull them away from the spine.
Why are those important to people?
What's that?
Why is that important? Why is that so?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm kidding. No, the reason for scapular retraction is that for any movements where your shoulder is, number one, not going to be committing to a significant range of motion. It's typically going to be something where you are counting on the shoulders to stabilize a movement for the pec or the lat or the posterior shoulder girdle, depending on the movement, depending on the level of activation, depending on the load. Now, when you have scapular retraction and scapular depression, you are counting, and those are two separate things. Depression, elevation being where you pull, where you shrug. Depression being where you pull your shoulder blades, the bottom points of your shoulder blades down toward the hips. When you do both of those things together, retraction and depression, you are really limiting the amount of movement that your shoulder is going to be able to make, right?
It makes me think of like a sailboat. Right. And so if you have a sailboat with a sail on it and you just tied everything, or you didn't tie anything and the wind blows, like your sail just goes out into the wind, and you might go somewhere and you might not go somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? But to get the most use from the wind and the most use of the sailboat, you're going to need to put appropriate tensions on all points of the sail, so that way you can actually like bolster and carry the boat through when the wind hits it, kind of a thing. And that's one of the ways I kind of envision effective ranges of motion.
That's a really good one. Yeah. What's that?
It's not the worst.
It's not the worst. Yeah. So for a test, for anybody that might be watching this, if you're going to test your range of motion and how scapular retraction and or depression affects it, do a simple test. Take your arm, either arm, doesn't matter, and raise it up as high as you can overhead. Right? Keep your elbow as in line with the front of your body as you can. So don't wing it out to the side. Bring it all the way up in front, like you're going to shake somebody's hand, and you just have to, and you're going to shake a giant's hand.
Psych.
Right? Oh, yeah. Or you're going to like go bowling. Right? Now, pull your shoulder blade back on just that one side. Drop your arm, pull your shoulder blade back on just that one side. And now try it again. And you'll find that your elbow doesn't really, if you keep your shoulder blade retracted, your elbow doesn't really lift too much higher than your shoulder. Now, retract the shoulder blade, now erase that and just pull the shoulder blade down toward the hip. Squeeze the muscle on the side of your ribs, and then try and lift your arm.
Yeah.
Right? Even lower. Yeah. Now, let it go, and then do them both. Retract first, then depress, and then try and lift your arm.
Yep.
It's really limited, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, depending on where your arms are positioned when you try to commit to that movement, such as if you're in a movement for a press, like a bench press, and you have the arms up, and then you try and pull the shoulder blades back, and then you retract them down. You retract the shoulder blades and then try and depress them. When you lift that, if all of that's true, all of that effort will be largely self-guided. Your body will limit you in how much you can perform or not perform that movement. It'll limit both your range and your available number of reps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you have a lot of muscle. Yeah, you have a lot of muscle groups involved, right?
That's how I train on like Romanian deadlifts, right? Is you engage your core and hip hinge, and you only go so far as your hamstrings and glutes will allow. It'll hit that hard tension,
100%
so to
right.
speak, that hard wall of the tension of the glutes and hamstrings, and then you come back up out of the Romanian deadlift version.
So why is what's called scapular retraction and scapular depression, why is that important to something like a deadlift? The reason is that the more free floating that your shoulders are when you're in that movement, the more responsibility they will exclusively bear.
Yeah.
So if your shoulder, let's take a press, for instance, because fewer people are familiar with a deadlift than they are with a bench press. The bench press is kind of one of everyone's beginner go-to exercises at the gym, right? When they first start working out.
I would even argue in high school we never deadlifted. We avoided deadlift. Now they gave us a trap bar and told us to do trap bar deadlift, but they didn't call it trap bar deadlift. They just called it trap bar.
Yeah. Well, okay, but let's take a press, right? So if your shoulder blades if your scapulas are not retracted, whenever you go to do the press, your elbows are going to go down in such a way. If they're not retracted, your elbows are going to go down or going to go toward the floor or the bench or whatever, and your shoulders are going to round. Which means that until your elbow gets in line, gets far enough forward so that your chest can participate, all of that load bearing responsibility is going to be on your shoulders, which is precisely the reason why many people get shoulder injuries out of any kind of pressing movements.
Now, is it wrong to go that deep?
It is not. Yeah, that's a great question, John.
Phrasing.
To be fair, John already knows the answer. It is not wrong to go that deep into a press as long as the load is commensurate with the amount of available strength.
Right.
Your shoulders acting on their own, which they most certainly, well, almost exclusively do in that range of a bench press if you do not have the shoulder blades retracted. For your shoulders to act on their own, that's fine. I mean, it's totally fine.
I'd encourage
as
it.
long. What's that?
I'd encourage it as long
In
as.
fact, yeah.
As long
Yeah,
as
in fact,
you are establishing, again, as I was referring to it earlier with the sailboat analogy, some effective ranges of motion, right? And doing that with appropriate load, which is what you were saying too, I believe, right? The appropriate intensity. Because if we go too intense, like if you're trying to max out your chest, but then you take this to that position, you're going to have to do some sort of compensation, which will look like either throwing your hips up in the air, your head coming way up off of the bench, or some sort of stair climbing sort of method. It won't look really pretty, as pretty as you think it does, and it's because you're trying to tow 2 tons with a Camry.
Yeah. Right.
If you're lucky, it's a Camry. It's probably more like my little
Bicycle.
hybrid Corolla.
That's actually a really
engine.
right. That's a really good analogy. Yeah. So having the appropriate load for the range of motion, totally fine. And like John said, in fact, encouraged. But
that'd be really good for like deload weeks too.
Sure. Yeah.
So, like,
for the purposes of anybody watching this, describe deload.
So, in the sense of like periodization, we always highlight going through max strength, stabilization, hypertrophy. Those are the kind of the big ones I feel. Endurance, power would be to round them all out. And we focus on that a lot of times as we cycle through these different seasons, if you want to think of them in that way as well, like just the seasons of lifting. And so a deload week or a deload cycle even would be where you're reducing either your volume, your intensity, and just in general sense, less work overall. Not to take it to the extreme of no work. You still want to be doing something, and then you just don't want to be doing necessarily to your maximum efforts or the same intensity that you would with a standard workout.
A lot of people go into what would unknowingly go into deload when they say, well, this is my recovery week. And they just go into way lighter expressions of all the same shit they were doing, right? Then, yeah. Right? Is that fair?
And it's important, I mean, twofold. Periodization is important to help mitigate pain, because you'll get different movements, different planes of exercises. Hopefully, even if you're just randomly spinning a wheel and choosing your exercises that way, there's going to be some good opportunity to be hitting different planes of motion. But by doing different intensities and different wear and tear on the body, which has its own, but to really set apart a solid week or two to really kind of cool your jets. And if you're looking for examples of this, like, look at any professional sport. NBA, NFL, any of them, they have seasons. But even within then, you were going to have, like, NFL. Linemen only play so many downs for half of the game, right? Offense or defense. If you're looking at NASCAR, there's pit stops where you have to, like, take a chance to, like, calm the engine down, refuel, new tires, whatever it is, right? All sports are going to have this magnified. So how are we different? I think a lot of times, too, not to be long-winded, we naturally deload and we don't realize it, especially the layman, so to speak, right? It might be we start feeling nagginess in our joints, or we're just excessively tired, or we fried our CNS and we don't really realize it. And so we naturally skip workouts, or we maybe sleep a little bit longer or more than we normally would. And so it's the body kind of takes over. I got to go take care of my wife's dinner real quick. So, Paul, you got to carry the show with me over here.
That's fine. So the thing you want to pay attention to, if we're going to get back to scapular retraction and depression and why that's important. We're talking about the bench press model, not model as like it's swim week. Well, get ready with me. Model instead the bench press example. If you don't have the scapula retracted whenever you go to do the bench press, and that way your chest is long and therefore recruited, I'm not then therefore recruited, but your chest is long and therefore you are able to recruit it instead of collapsed, and you are only able to really recruit it once the elbows get to a certain point in relation to the rib cage. You have the scapula retracted, and then when you go to do the press, your chest is participatory for a greater duration during the movement at the long end. You have the shoulders stable with the scapula retracted and the scapula depressed to enable yourself to get into movements that would otherwise be too heavy for your shoulders to bear alone. That's why in this example that we can see here on the screen, where John has his shoulder blades down, and that we can readily identify that by how much of his neck we can see in the image there. His neck is visible, but also what's important here is that you can see the round of his shoulders, but you cannot see his spine. So if his shoulder blades, right, if his shoulder blades were what the reverse of retracted, which is protracted, then you would see like that kind of pump effort rather than the shoulders being back, right? So it's a really important distinction to make.
So one last thing before we move on and get into Rocky here, because that brings up a pretty, I think, big debate within deadlifting groups, right? Is how much protraction is tolerable or how much protraction is safe. And as I say this, there's always this caveat, and I think it's a little bit of an out for people, but at the same time, it's very valid, is the sense of training all positions and training different positions and things of that nature. I once had someone ask me, because I was at a handstand clinic of all things, and we did these warm-ups, but one of the warm-ups was like this willow tree kind of thing, and the guy was saying to try to get movement at every joint and twist, turn, rotate, all of that kind of stuff. So a friend that was there was asking me what I thought about that, and I think it's terrible under load to do those kinds of movements, especially maximum loads. But as a general sense of just moving our bodies, I think it is very important to be able to facilitate those kinds of movement, right? It's every joint is like a hinge in a door jamb or somewhere like that. You don't want to, just because you don't go in and out of that one bedroom, it doesn't mean you want that door hinge to rust.
I have a simple answer for that. How much protraction of the shoulder blade is permissible? The exact amount where your lats are still recruitable.
Fair.
Right? Like,
no, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you, and then I guess the last thought on this is you've shared this idea of kind of cross tension. And in my mind's eye, that's that sense of having equal pull and pushes both ways, at least consciously, or as conscious as we can. Is that a kind of a fair way of explaining it, or?
Well, so cross tension just means recruiting opposing sides of your body for the execution of a singular effort, right? Like whatever that is. It can be something like running, treating running not as just one movement, but instead when left arm and right leg are forward, or right arm and left leg are back, right? Treating those as a unit wherein the tension between those 2 points meets at the center. And then you don't have anything that is really spinning off wildly as a result of over recruitment.
Okay.
Cross tension is beautiful. It's a wonderful thing to have happen, but all of the movements with it have to be tight. The further your extremities are away from each other, the less potent the effect will be. You can throw a really powerful cross tensioned punch. As a matter of fact, that is how you ideally throw a punch, right? You punch from the leg that you punch from the foot that is furthest behind you.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and pushing through that back leg and generating the force coming through the body and twisting through.
Right. So, and people can hate on that statement all you want, but if here's a hot take, a controversial hot take. If you disagree with me, please let me know, and let's discuss the reason why I'm right.
But I mean, even not so, right? It's even you just think about like throwing a baseball or a football or anything like that, right? While you still are going to generate force through that front leg, we're still pushing through that back leg to get that hip generated, that force generated. And if we're throwing, even a punch, even so, I can see that even more. We're trying to create this vector, this straight line of through our body of 2x4s, for a lack of a better example, right? Just to keep that force to transfer as cleanly through as we can. Because at the end of it, right, if we're force transfer is going to go through solids a lot quicker than liquids. And being like, again, you're rigid through your muscles, you're rigid through that body, creating that cross tension. Whereas if you go kind of limp with the arm and hit, it's not going to have that same effect for us.
Right. Well, and even in accounting the baseball analogy that you talked about, when you're throwing a pitch, one leg, the leg that's furthest behind you is the one that's off the ground. But you're generating the force with the lift of that leg.
Yeah.
There's not any force being generated through the front. That's just keeping you standing. Right. It's the same thing. All right, man. Without further ado, so that's all I would say on that. Let's look at this first lift again.
Oh, one more time through here. So it's already coming up.
All right, good, perfect up. On the way down, hips should go further. Yeah, you can see how the arms move, right? Some of that's unavoidable. It looks like, go down, play a little more. Okay, because when you were going down originally and the image was pixelating, it looked like your soul was exploding out of your body.
Yeah, I still feel like getting more of that more hips back, trying to really fall back more, get the knees back and then let them come forward.
So for anybody who's going to be looking at that when you're doing it on your own, just keep looping that part. When you're doing that on your own, one of the ways that you can determine whether or not you've got that active is if your hips are reaching far back enough that your toes barely feel like they want to lift. That's a good metric for you to use.
Yeah, I feel even there as I'm looking at this again that my knees are breaking almost first versus generating the hip hinge.
Right. So great lift. It's the set. And really, if someone said, hey, what do I need to work on? I would say very little, precious little. But it's one of, I have some material that I was working on and I sent to my beta reader, and their response was, well, I suppose I can edit anything, right? Because I'd worked and revised this, right? And their words were, well, I think that I can really edit anything. But my question is, do you need me to edit this? Because it looks okay. It's one of those things, right? Where if you need me to fuss over it, sure.
Well, so one of the things I guess you can't see that I'm working on in there is I'm wanting to work on getting into some power clean.
Okay.
And so again, with this grip issue on my right hand, not feeling not necessarily secure, but just getting a good hook grip. And then one of the things I was kind of playing with today was making sure I was rolling a little bit more in with my hands kind of towards my body So from a standing perspective, right, where it'd be a little bit more of a not letting my hands go here when I'm holding, rather making sure I'm getting a good.
Yeah. Okay. So that's your mousing hand.
Noticing on that was during that lift today was a little bit of my hands wanting to break during the lift, and so kind of honed that some more.
So whenever you're gonna your corrective before you go into it next time is just to hold up 4 and try and touch your pinky finger. See how your hand is wanting to collapse this way, right? Hold it up and just stretch that thumb over. And just keep flexing that way and try to make the crease come from here, not here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when you go to grip it,
we'll be able to get a. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try that out. I'll try that out. That'll be a fun one.
Right on. Let's see it. So while John's getting this set up, let's talk about montages for a second.
Oh.
Which is what we're going to be looking at, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Montages are really inspirational. We see them a lot in movies, right? I mean, they're used so much and so often that people make fun of them, right? Like there's this one movie. People in movies make fun of montages in movies. There's
Team America
one movie,
Police.
Yeah, where the guy was like, you know what you need? You need a montage. And the lyrics of the song had it spot on. You know, every scene show a little improvement, and a few setbacks, some really meaningful, wise instruction, and then in the end, you know, you've gone from 0 to hero.
Pretty much, right?
The deal with montage, what's that?
Pretty much, right?
Yeah, the deal with montages though is that only if the only time you ever see any injury is if what's the goal of the montage is something that has contact, like football game or boxing or wrestling or whatever, right? The only injury that ever occurs is when they're at the event.
Yeah.
That is not what happens, right?
Very, very rarely, I would say, right? Like,
right.
I never did any fight camps, but I played, again, high school football, ran track. I played ultimate frisbee in college, nothing professional, but it's like you eventually are always going to end up with like a rolled ankle, a little tweak of the knee, some tightness in the back, maybe a pulled hammy, a little stinger in the neck, or a little kind of coat hanger line across the shoulder blades. Just because in sports, like the whole thing is about the competition. It's about completing a task, and your body be damned.
Yeah, it's and really it's doing that despite what the topography of the world, you know, like the people coming at you, the terrain that you're on, like the slipperiness of whatever. You can do everything right and your foot lands on a banana peel. And that's it, right? So we need to always remember that about montages, is that while they are inspirational, they do not mimic real life. Anything can happen. I remember once, actually, I was at the gym. I was getting ready to do, I remember the exercise very well, but I don't remember how much weight, but I remember it was going to be a bit of a record for me. I was on a flat bench. And the way that I would do it is I would like sit at the edge of the bench, the rack is way behind me, and I would hype myself up with it. And then I would lay back on the bench and then push back and scoot and then put my feet on the bench and start going. Well, I had really torn my legs apart the day 2 days before, so I was in the middle of just all of that soreness, right? Well, it's a line of flat benches, and this guy is carrying this 45-pound plate. And someone's walking this way, he's walking that way, and he turns like this, and as soon as I lay back and I start sliding, he gets bumped or something and drops the plate on my thigh, right? And it hurt. I'm not gonna lie, it hurt. And I wasn't even working legs that day, but it really kind of jacked up my knee and stuff. It hurt.
Well, that's that kind of double whammy of the tissues are already in an inflamed state, and
Yeah.
then you have this major injury. I mean, or you have an injury come upon it, which is going to even inflict more inflammation and potentially a spasm, even as a hypercontraction of the quad or
Right.
whatever hit, as another kind of layer of protection. So, yeah,
Hmm.
that's
Thankfully,
shitty on shitty.
yeah, thankfully, no weight had left the rack or anything. My hands weren't even on it, um, but that was an injury that resulted of carelessness on no one's part. It was just an enormous coalescence of circumstance that resulted in this thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that, you got to keep that in mind about montages. They only ever show meaningful
parts.
mistakes. Yeah, the sexy parts.
I'm going to mute the rest
All
of
right.
this. So.
What's that?
I'm going to mute the rest of this.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so here we have them running. Now, we talked in a previous instance about, okay. We talked in a previous instance about how Stallone had some really good running form, except that he was just a little too upright.
Sorry, I was running.
It's funny to watch these old movies, right? Like, okay. So let's call to mind a couple of different things here. Actually, if you look at Carl Weathers, his left hand is going up a little further than his right every time he runs. Stallone, but both of them have their chests open, have their arms open, chests are open, and so as they're running, lots of room for respiration, lots of room for the ribs to expand. Nobody's arms are coming up and across, right?
Yep.
It's
Now the thing I always tease, and this is being probably nitpicky though, is working on not letting the elbows hyper rest behind the ribs if possible.
Yeah.
Again, this is just forward tilting inducing. It's exhausting as hell to let your shoulders drop down and then try to have these kind of robot, like it's a Rock'em. I think of like Rock'em Sock'em robots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our track coach used to say you either do whatever cue works best for you in your mind, but it's either you're pulling a pistol, right? So you want your hand to run by your hip, or you're going from cheek to cheek, right? So from your face cheek to your butt cheek. And I guess the last one was like Q-tips. You gotta get the Q-tip to your ear, right? You gotta pull the Q-tip out of your pocket and get it to your ear. But all of it again is to minimize the washing machine run. And I feel you see that with Carl there, right? He gets a little bit more of that kind of washing
a little bit more of a
washing
washing machine run.
You know, we're all torsion. So
Yeah.
we want to get rotation through the shoulders or else the body will get torsion elsewhere. And that's where we'll get
That's a good point. Yeah, man.
your legs. If you do a lot of running, this might be where you kick yourself in the shins even.
Yeah.
And other things of that nature. So that's why we care about it. I'm missing that bag.
Yeah. Okay, pause that. Now, if you rewind it just the 5 seconds or whatever, you'll see that when Stallone is moving into it, his midline is crossing across the bag a whole lot, right? Like you were just saying, the washing machine effect. Going around the bag a whole lot, leaning into that front leg. Now, if you watch when Carl Weathers does it, tight controlled, and it's just this one twist. This particular part right here is some of the lightest footwork. When they start montaging and they show that Stallone gets really good at it, that is some of the lightest footwork you will. I mean, it is really something else. Yeah. All right. To turn around and run backward at that speed is really something else, man. Yeah, love it. All right, side hops, all that. I don't think I would wear that shirt in any kind of a training thing.
So we're getting cross training here. So this could be like we were talking about deloads earlier.
Yeah.
So depending on what you're training, like something like going to a very different specificity or type of training isn't a bad thing, especially if it helps hit similar systems, but it's using different recruitment patterns. And something like this, it's all non-contact. It's all low impact, no impact.
Yeah. Okay. So here we have. All right. So now actually you can see here how his midline is staying largely in line with the guy holding his mitts here. You can also see that if we look at the run, when they were jogging, Carl Weathers had a lot of the bouncing going on, but now that they're running, man, he is running like a full-on trained ass athlete.
Now
Right,
again,
you got that forward lean.
nitpicking though. Check his right arm.
Oh no, absolutely, you got that elbow flare, but that's a football that's a football runner.
Oh yeah,
That is not a track runner, right? Stallone too in this one, he's really going all out. But this is, I think, the part where I'm talking about the tightness of that footwork. That is really something else. There we go. Okay.
Again, when we're sprinting and things of that nature, like they're on sand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and if we think about that again, depending on what you're doing, like sand is getting really low impact, but because every step you take, it's going to shift on you. So it's also going to be a lot of energy, like to require you to be able to.
Yeah, a lot of inertia, right, to run against.
And my high school track, we ran on pea gravel. And so like we'd run on that stuff, and like I swear I felt so fucking slow. But come race day, when we get on like a nice track with our spikes and everything, man, we fly so fast. So there is definitely again that there is always a benefit of playing like you practice, but if you can put yourself at a little bit of a deficit of your training or of your playing facility, so to speak, to where you don't injure yourself or set yourself up to be overly exhausted for your competition, like you'll get a bunch of results, a bunch of benefit from it.
The way that I've always described that is, if you're going to train to run a marathon, 26.2 miles, give yourself enough time to train to run a 30-mile marathon, you know, or a 30-mile run. And that way, the 26.2 miles won't seem like that hard. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'd want to build a summer home in that environment, but yeah. Let's see. A lot of midline strikes there. That's good. A lot of crossovers. That's awesome. Keeping that bag in line. You can see there how he was hitting at the middle of his.
My wife would not kiss me after all that.
Yeah, no. Yeah. She was getting that woman was getting paid, right? That actor,
right.
Yeah.
Now, other things you said after last week is we're practicing anything. We don't ever have the coordination or the cadence quite down, and we're seeing in this set of montages more of that practice, I feel, of the specific boxing cadencing and the specific boxing maneuvers in the montage here. And so, again, whatever our habits are, well, not our habits, but whatever our hobbies are, whatever the thing is that we enjoy, right? It's always like that, right? We're going to be stumbling over. We're going to be looking all silly the first couple times we attempt it. And then eventually, if we stick with it, and how many days do you think this is a course of, right? Like
2.
How many months?
Yeah.
And even if it was just a few months, like this is, in some cases, someone doing this would be doing this twice a day for 2 to 3 hour sessions.
If you're training like this with that kind of a retinue behind you, like you're getting sponsored. You got money in the tank on that one, so it gives you a lot of time and an unlimited diet, right? I mean, there's no working, there's no going to school, there's just doing that.
Yep.
And so that's all well and good, for competition at a level.
Realizing what's again achievable and what we're able to do. Right, there's the human genetic potential, but then there's what's Paul got time for, what's John got available for, and then, and to cap all of it, is that even what you want, right? Like if we're looking just to be healthy and not in pain, like this is extreme.
Yeah,
not just the pain side of being boxing, but that kind of a workout routine. Do you recall, I mean, you read these more than I do, but like the latest studies on what's needed just for longevity or general health now, as far as a recommendation or...
Oh, like how many days a week and how many minutes a week of this?
Or minutes of
exercise? I don't remember what the latest one is. Hang on.
I would say it's almost like, it's something like 2 to 3 days for 30 minutes.
Yeah. 2 to 3 days. I
know this is going to sound snide or, exercise elitist kind, but that's really not that much.
No, there was for any of the people who are 75 minutes of vigorous intensity cardio per week, broken down into smaller chunks throughout the week, such as 30 minutes or a mix. Yeah.
75 is the number?
75 vigorous, 150 moderate.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
2 hours a week.
Yeah.
2.5 hours.
So, I forgot what I was going to say. Yep. Gone. All right.
Well, let's watch the footwork.
Yeah. Watch the footwork.
Rocky 4 now. I guess we skipped Rocky 3 or we watched.
Oh, this is when he is going to all the age-old things, age-old
habit
training methods.
Trainings.
Yeah. And
yeah,
like training
though,
them.
right? Like, there's a reason why old training methods worked, right?
No school like the old school.
I mean, you think about it too. We see I feel like when we look at it, if you're students of history, you see a lot of this from whether it be religion or spirituality practices, but even into working out and things like maces from like Eastern culture and yoga from the Eastern practices and how that just blends in. And you can try to reinvent the wheel on a lot of these things, but at the end of it, you're just trying to generate tension across the muscles.
Yep, that's it.
Now, things I would like on some of these things, right? What reminds me of your rules for a safe exercise? Right, what are the three rules? Right, is it instantly mitigatable? Are there better exercises that can get after it? And then I think there's a third rule.
No, what makes an exercise shitty is
shitty. That's what it is.
Yeah, is it immediately mitigatable? Are there other and better ways to get it done? I'm sorry, I'm blanking. I'm watching this montage now. I got sucked up into it, just like everybody else, right? Everybody else who ever watches these fucking movies. Are there other ways Are there other and better ways to get it done? Is it immediately mitigatable? And does it overall promote longevity and wellness? Right? Like, is it actually targeting what you want it to target? And is it safe? Is it safe? Is there other and better ways to get it done? And is it immediately mitigatable? If it's not safe, don't do it. You know, like, for instance, wrestling alligators is a great way for you to develop speed and strength, right? It's not safe.
No.
And the strength and speed that you develop doing that, there are other and better ways to get it done.
Right.
And it is not immediately mitigatable.
Right.
You know, one of the reasons we have a spotter when we're going into really heavy loads, for instance, is that it keeps the exercise safe. There might be other ways to get it done, but they are not necessarily better. So if I have a spotter when I'm doing a bench press movement, for instance, when I am working with a heavy load, it is immediately, John's camera angle switched on us. It's immediately mitigatable because if I start losing my capability for it, that spotter can immediately step in.
Right.
Right. And even if nothing else, hold it so that just long enough so I can escape.
Yep.
And after all that is said and done, you've made yourself able to immediately get out of it. You've made it safe, and there might be other ways to get it done. There almost certainly are. There's very, I can't think of anything really where someone's like, this is the only way that you can possibly train this thing.
Yeah.
Right.
How
there's always
can you be, and what tools do you have access to?
Right. There's always other ways to do it, but are they better? If they're not better,
I hate it, but it's like pull up curls or bicep curls on a pull-up bar.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like you can train your biceps, and it's an overloaded technique, but it is a very advanced technique kind of a thing, and it takes the kind of mind fuckery for you to be able to like know you're doing it right. I think a little bit as well, but or again, TRXs, man, you can do a lot of biceps with that thing, but you have to know how to utilize the tool appropriately, or else you're just kind of flailing in the with some nylon straps.
a lot of times whenever you're like, oh, there are other and better ways to get that done, you might feel like that because they reward you more, but in actuality what's happening is they're rewarding you more because that's the stuff that you need to work on more, or more importantly, that's the stuff that you feel stronger in. Let's take tricep work, for instance.
Everybody does tricep press downs.
Right?
I mean,
right? Yeah, but when you start doing something overhead, or when somebody does something like, and they're doing the tricep extensions this way versus they turn their arm like this and start coming like that, right? To do the tricep work, you work different muscles alongside that muscle for stability. You know, when I'm working it back here, my chest is long, and I have other muscle structures that are long and some muscle structures that are short. When I pull it over here, some of those things switch in reverse, right? And so the things that serve to stabilize the joint as I'm moving through the effort change, even though the actionable muscle is the same. So other ways to get it done might just mean that you're working other complementary muscles. But is it safe? Is it immediately mitigatable? Are there other and better ways to get it done? If the answer is no, yes, and I'm sorry, no, and then yes, then you need to move to a different thing, right? But if the answer is, yeah, it's safe, and there are other ways, but not necessarily better, and it is immediately mitigatable, then yeah, go ahead, proceed. There are some of these exercises that are being done, like this one right here. For instance, this isn't all that great for his neck.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I stopped here. That's what got me to
yeah, I mean, an unbelievable amount of core strength present here, but all of that load bearing is going into his neck. Now, I'm not shitting on the amount of strength required for all this, right? But
it's an excellent move in the regards of the shoulder stability that you need to generate or should be generating by leveraging yourself with the arms there, and to hoist your hips up with straight legs, like the amount of core and hip flexor strength to be able to do all of that. Phenomenal.
Yeah. Yes. But all of that load contacting with the earth or with the ground or whatever, with the platform, is on the back of his head and therefore on the back of his neck. And so that's not great.
And this would be like, if we were to talk about not, Rocky, superhuman, Rambo preparing for the fight with the Ruskies, right? Who is indestructible, but like a normal human who hangs out on their computers or they're on a phone, and they already have a habituation or a posture of a forward head or a chin tuck kind of a thing. How would this make things worse for them?
Well, actually, so how would this make this worse? The truth of it is, it likely wouldn't feel that way. It would feel like they were very strong in the movement, provided that they were able to get their legs more than an inch or so up off the thing, right? But once all that was developed, this would actually feel like a really strong, powerful exercise for them. Until habituation had gradually moved all the cement blocks far enough onto like this, where cervical compression or supportive tissue between the vertebrae, like the discs had slipped in the neck, and then there was like things like spasming pain when certain movements were committed, or maybe even some type of, in the worst case scenario, some kind of like paralysis or something like that, right?
That'd be the extreme, but
that would be the extreme.
To me, I feel like this would be exacerbating. Like, I completely agree with you, is that individuals, I think, would feel really strong with this, whether they're kicking up to get this high and controlling their descent, or however they're working through this. But to me, this seems like, especially the more the chin's tucked in this position, the more we're just asking for a herniated disc or a bulge disc or something of that nature, or potentially even a pinching, depending on how your disc and spine are. Again, not trying to alarm or be a worry about it, but it's one of those things like why exercise selection matters.
It really does.
Like if you have a healthy neck and a healthy spine, less to worry about. But if you already are presenting with a forward neck, a straight neck, if you're already presenting with like zingers or tight things and there's ice picks in the back of your shoulder blades or numbness that are going into your hands, these are all symptoms that like nerves are being pinched on or a muscle imbalance is present. And this posture specifically, if I get into the right screen, you can't really see it here, but this portion here, even as great as this externally rotated shoulder is, it's still the neck and the chin all collapsing into there. And then to your point as well, is all this load is being jammed down into there as well. So when there's that much load is on top of it, you're going to have a lot of muscle activation. So you're going to also be just a lot of contractions. And again, is there better things to do that would work this? Fuck yeah. You could do a hollow body with a weight.
Yeah, you could, or do a lever on a pull-up bar.
Yeah.
You know, you grab the pull-up bar and try and move your back this way and move your legs up this way. Same effect.
Yep.
Same effect. And your capability to do it is determined by muscularity rather than skeletal load bearing, like what's taking place here.
And even if you were to kick and try to use momentum on that pull-up bar lever version, right, you're really just going to be kind of swinging. And if you take it to a worst case scenario and you got some really jacked up shoulders on top of it, you know, you'll probably already have a hard time getting your arms up overhead to get onto the pull-up bar to do this. So that might be a self-policing effort in that regard. But again, you're going to be in a lot better position, I think, overall, trying to attempt that lever in that position. If you couldn't get your arms overhead, the Roman chair would be a variation where it wouldn't necessarily be, maybe you wouldn't get the full lever action because of the shoulder, the chair would stop you, but just getting the leg lifts and working that portion and keeping that sternum lifted as a progressive.
He was doing a kind of a version of that when he was hanging off the hayloft.
Yeah.
So let's answer the three questions. Is this safe? We've already talked about no and why. Are there other and better ways to get it done? We just discussed those. And then is it immediately mitigatable? No. No, this one he cannot. He cannot immediately. I mean, he can let go, but he's just going to slam down with it. But immediately mitigatable without injury? No.
That's fair.
You know? Yeah.
I think I guess I think of it as instantly mitigatable. Like he can get off of the pain side, I think, but again, the repercussion, so to speak, of the fall.
Yes.
Is what makes it even worse. Like it's one thing. You got a bar on your back and you either drop to the floor or you eject it off of your back and hope you don't catch your arms, right? And even then, that's not the most beneficial, right? You'd rather just go straight down and let that thing hit the safeties versus throwing your arms back and catching your arms in that way, right? Because that same repercussive effort of it, right? When you go straight down on a failed lift with the safeties, you're less likely to hurt yourself, especially if you have the bars appropriately set to the right height. Like, ego to the bottom. Like, I'm squatting, so I'm going to put them on the very bottom.
Yeah. Or if you're doing on a pull-up bar, you can let everything but your grip go. And if your grip fails, if you have enough cushioning underneath you, you know, you have a good laugh.
Right.
And that's about it, right? Anyway, so yeah, not a great exercise. However, a very clear demonstration of some serious power. All right.
Strength. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Why is he sweating so much? The trainer, you know?
I'd be sweating too, man.
You know, we wouldn't do anything.
I'm going to lose my job.
So this right here, great exercise.
The rope.
Those dodges over and under the rope. Great exercise. Keep in with the midline. Keep your balance. You can even throw punches over.
It's balance. It's coordination. We're working.
They're awesome. Dealing with that cow yoke or that yoke right there. Yeah, it's heavy.
Juicing. We do not condone juicing.
No.
Choice to do it, but look into it first, and don't recommend it though. I
think I do want to take a second here and say, again, the reason why we talk about that is that the overall impact of it, there's no clinical study that says, oh yeah, up to this point, completely safe, right? However, everything we're going to do in this life as an adult is up to you. So just keep in mind the safety hazards. You know, that there just simply aren't enough long-term studies done on the overall impact of, you know, like regardless. Kind of like the thing with alcohol, how alcohol consumption, the latest data on alcohol consumption says, and we are not nutritionists, so take this for what it is, but the latest data is like, no, don't drink.
Yeah.
Just don't drink.
Yeah.
But if you want to drink that, I mean, if you want to drink this, to you, you know, if you're an adult, you can buy it, and you know, it's not going to wreck your life, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, we all spend it. We all spend our life how we spend it.
Yeah.
The thing about juicing, or when you're on gear, that I wanted to address is how it's looked down upon by people for the wrong reasons. If you want to look down on something that someone is doing that detriments their health, fine. Then don't do it yourself, and you'll be okay. You leave that person to their things, and you know, stay on your things. But when we minimize the commitment and success and results of someone who is quote unquote juicing, it says that all of the hard work that they put in was artificial.
Right.
And anybody and any study will tell you juicing, all it does is take the last like two to maybe 5 or 7% that you're missing.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes that final little amount and get you there.
Right.
Right. Every other aspect of that, your nutrition, your training, your rest, all of that has to stay dialed in. And when it's not, juicing won't matter.
Right.
All you get is large. Right. So this is coming from someone who has never done a cycle of anything. I mean, I've, you know, taken plenty of supplements in my life, but never got on the quote unquote gear. But for anyone who is going to dismiss someone else's achievements simply because they were assisted with PEDs, understand that it really didn't account for much. It really didn't. It accounted for enough, but not much.
Right. And then to the same side of it too, right, is I think my concern for it is for the youngins.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to make a life-altering decision as an adult, but if you're especially still, I mean, I know 18 you're an adult, but as a 38-year-old male, I don't know that I was really ever like an adult until probably my mid-20s or 30s even. Right?
That's it. Okay.
That sense of like maturity and really kind of understanding kind of how things affect you. Now, I get it. People are going to mature and they've maybe seen some things and been exposed to some things in their life that I never could imagine, and that will grow you up fast. But something like when you're messing with your body's hormones, like that's a one-way road in a lot of cases, and if you go too far, right, there is no return in a lot of cases. Not saying death, but just the organ dysfunction that comes along with it. The back knee and all that is the like secondary stuff, right? Like that's the small potatoes of it. So again, if you are considering it, really just figure out why it's important to you. Why is it that you're wanting to do it? And then make sure you educate yourself on what's going on and what that road's going to be. Again, I don't condone it. I'm not going to say go for it, but you know, it's your choice. But I really encourage you to investigate and make sure you're educating yourself on it, because otherwise, there's been a lot of 30-year-olds and 20-some-year-olds that have been passing away that have been riding gear really, really hard. So
yep, and that really is the thing to consider. All I was addressing was the diminishing of other people's achievements because they were on gear.
Right.
That does nothing about. That was not me addressing at all the impact that it has on people's lives, right? The potentially irreparable damage. So yeah, like you said, John, really consider those things. They're important. Let's go for a little bit more, and then I got a boogie.
Boogie on. You gotta get to the right screen. Just trying to delete that message. I just don't know how to do that crap. So I saw this earlier too, and I wanted to kind of nitpick on this.
Oh yeah, that's nitpick worthy for sure. I didn't see it earlier, but yeah, that is nitpick worthy.
This is a horrible power clean. Like,
yep.
In so many ways. The biggest thing though is going to be getting those elbows up. This is again one of those. I mean, again, part of it's probably just for the visuals, and it's a quick segment of a montage again. But this is again, if you're power cleaning, you really want to get that front rack. You really want to get those elbows up in front of you to get that weight on top, not just this position. I'm not really sure how this ended up or how it started either, but
my suspicion is that this was done because of cinematography, and we need to see the broadness of your chest, Dolph.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So right there, both of them. Rocky, when he's going, Stallone, when he's going into this, if we look at that back arch, that is not good. I'm glad that his heel is planted there. But really, that is some serious arch in the back.
This is a common compensation that I see at gyms all the time, and it's something I got to work with even my clients a lot of times is resisting or fighting that urge to compensate in that regard. And unfortunately, he could have it set up. Again, this is probably cinematography as well, I feel.
Yeah.
Right, to again get that big broad chest and get the light glistening off your cleavage just alone.
Yeah.
But if this was, again, you're working this as a true exercise for yourself, as I'm sitting here, I'm looking and seeing too, this knee looks like it's falling in.
Yeah. Yeah, his heel's turned in for sure.
Yeah, the toes are coming towards the camera and his knees are at the cart. But again, if we were to look at this, I would rather him be more standing at this type of an angle, almost tangent to the cart. And then we can still manipulate the body a little bit here and there if we want to hit more delts or more chest. But I think to your point, at this angle, even though he's maybe pressing upwards, he's really recruiting probably more chest. And then the worst of it too is, again, we're hyper contracting that low back. And that could be potentially, again, like we're talking about the neck. This could be, again, setting up for potential herniations, bulges, all of the fun things that happen with your disc.
Yeah. Not a great position. This is pure movie stuff. All that other stuff we can critique and go, oh, I would do this way. I would do this way. This is one of those things. In fact, a lot of the stuff that's happened in this barn are things that I would do something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, if you're stuck in the middle of the, I don't know where this is setting, but like if you just don't have a lot of options, right, you have to be creative, and that's where, again, we were talking about those 3 points. Right? Are there better ways to do it? Is it safe? And is it still getting after what you're trying to get after, kind of a deal?
Yeah. Is it mitigatable?
Mitigatable.
Like here, that's not even mitigatable immediately. No. He's got to like do some kind of serious jump out of the way, hope that whatever, and that getting crashing down to the ground isn't going to hurt the people in the cart. Well, what's funny is he could do some serious like deadlifts with this.
Yeah.
And they'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a lot better effort. But it would work again different
yeah. Oh no, I'm just saying that's great for one thing, right? Same thing there. Lots of
flare out.
Yeah, not here, but yeah, right there, elbow flare out, but also a lot of back arch, which okay.
Yeah, not is it? Well, I guess as he grinds on, he continues on to have to lean back on.
Yeah.
And I would also say, again, not that I'm a big fan of weight belts, but this doesn't look to be a good weight belt. That looks to be a cinematography belt.
Yeah. Those are clearly different shots, too, leaning back and then facing forward.
Now, to that point, I wanted this right here. I make faces, I scream, and I holler. Contracting and squeezing your face and your jaw does not make you lift better.
No.
And this is how you can end up with things like TMJ,
Yeah.
or lock jaw even, is because we end up clenching really, really hard during these maximum efforts, and you end up putting a spasm into those small jaw muscles or throat muscles. And then when you go to bed at night, that spasm really locks in, and then you wake up wondering why the hell someone's stabbing you in your jaw, but it's TMJ.
So I knew a guy long time ago. Whenever he would do these presses like this, or anything really, he would do this thing where he would commit to an underbite, right, and then he would and squeeze, right, and strain. And one time when he was going to yell, he was like, and his bottom teeth pulled back from his top teeth. So, bottom jaw, top jaw, and his bottom teeth were like this. And then it went like this as he was like transitioned his face, his face transitioned into some different expression. And it broke his front tooth. Yeah. Yeah.
Hurt. God, that had to hurt.
Well, I know that he was like, "What the hell? What the hell?" And he ran off. So I didn't see the aftermath, but I know that
same thing though, right? It's this is the pancake dead spider to the extreme.
Yeah.
Right. He's always engaging those suckers, and then when we get to that real big effort, and we put that extra oomph into it. The thing I tell clients is you don't want to. You try not to show the stress.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's that sense of if you're in a competition, right? You don't want to show your competition that you're tired, or you don't want to show your competition that you're straining.
Don't limp into your match,
right?
Oh my God.
Again, get a little psychological, but even if you're a business meeting or you're dealing with a negotiation, right? You don't want to show your discomfort. You don't want to show your emotions necessarily on your face in those kind of moments. So I find that too is in these moments, one, it does you no good to clench your jaws. It doesn't make anything to close your eyes really, really hard. While you do want to have like this sense of tightness throughout your entire body, the amount of input that our facial muscles are going to have to the overall output of your body is negligible. So relax it, calm it down, and focus on your breathing and the lift. Try to keep the face calm. The other thing I always say is try to be the Hindu cow in the butcher's line. Some bad things are going to happen, but you just be at peace with it.
That's profound.
I try.
I usually just say go into it with the aesthetic of a burning monk.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. That's about all I got time for. Yeah. Unfortunately.
With that limit.
All right. No, not my limit. Just time limit. So let's recap there. Montages, like we said at the beginning, great and fine and wonderful, highly inspirational, but they don't show the reality of the potential for injury, or the reality of what the sacrifice is that's necessary to commit to. And they only ever show the results, right? The positive results. And injury only ever happens at the event that they're training for. Right.
I was going to say we don't see the actual ebb and flows, right? It's always the uphill march with maybe some plateaus, never real stumbles, never real restart moments.
Yeah, you're never going to see in one of those where like they're like, all right, let's hit it, and then it flashes to like work the next day, and the person comes into work and they've got their arm in the sling, and their coworkers go, well, what happened? They go, oh, I tore my bicep. Mm-hmm. I'm out for 12 weeks.
Right.
You can never see that, right? Yeah. But it happens way more than you think. Yeah. So keep in mind that starting slow, starting small, you can always build on, right? You can always build up. You can always experiment with periodization whenever you're hitting a wall, when you're trying to break through your plateaus. And you can experiment with different kinds of efforts applied to the same movement. Do more reps. A lighter weight, do more. A little bit lighter weight, do more reps. Take more time, do the same amount of weight and the same number of reps. there are many, many things that you can experiment with to get past your plateaus.
And you know what else you can do?
What?
You can stop when something doesn't feel right.
When something doesn't feel right, fucking put it down. Just that's all it takes. It's one of those things like whenever you're holding you're holding a kitchen knife and you're getting ready to cut something up, right? Like got an onion that you're ready to cut, and if you feel uncertain about it, right? All that's there is potential. Just put it down. The onion can stay on the cutting board. Just put it down. Come back to it later when you're feeling more confident, or get somebody else to do it with more experience or less less trepidation. Anyway, or just get used to eating onions made differently. It's cool. The thing is when you're getting the signal to stop. You can always get into it safely, right?
And if you feel like you can't, right? That's again, pay attention to those red flags. Listen to those signals. Your body is communicating with you all the time. I know it sounds woo-woo and all this other kind of stuff, but we're getting signals from the body all the time. If it's an exercise that feels good, you will have a cathartic sense. It will be a struggle, and it will feel good. And when you do things that don't feel right well, you'll know it. Everybody's had that instant. Like you slip and stumble, or you tried picking up something, and that just didn't feel right. That everything you just instantly stop. Why don't we do it when we're exercising?
Well, to that point, how often have any of us ever heard somebody talking about their injury going, yeah, it had tweaked out like the day before, or I felt like if he would have, it's like, I'll just go ahead and try and, I'll see what's up, which is the same thing as declaring, I'll just go until I get hurt.
Yep.
Really pay attention to those things ahead of time. Just, really. And if they mean that you have to stop the montage, then stop the montage.
I guess my last
part of the
here,
thing.
Sorry to cut you off again.
Go ahead.
If something's feeling different, do something different.
That is one of the most profound things I've heard you say, and I've heard you say it before. No, seriously, if something's different, if something feels different, then something is being performed differently, right? Good or bad,
right?
And I think that's one of those things that we should have Ted Lasso style over the door. Seriously.
I don't have Apple
anyway,
TV.
What's that?
I don't have Apple TV.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I have to pirate that somehow. Not that we would pirate ever.
I think that John means dress up in a pirate outfit while he legally subscribes to Apple TV, right?
Well, was it a borrow? In College Station, when we had this thing, where it's like Aggies don't lie, steal, or tolerate those or do, but they collaborate, elaborate, and borrow.
Nice one.
All right, I'm going to
all right, we are here
real quick here to raid, but any last things for you, sir?
Oh, just that we're on every Tuesday, U.S. Central Time, 6:30 to 7:38. John is here on Thursdays as well, and you can reach us on any one of our socials.
Stay mindful as fuck, y'all.
And don't compensate. We'll see you next time.
I'm going to slide over to Dr. Devil. He's evidently doing a workout. Chest and buys. So.
All right. Have a good one.
Enjoy chat. Thank y'all for being here. See y'all Thursday morning.
All right.